and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. They didn't disappoint. The event, it even elicited a quick response from President Trump. Chinese leader Xi Jinping declared that China's rise is unstoppable, and he showcased over 10,000 troops marching in perfect unison. Also notable was the complete lack of so-called diversity that we see elevated in the West. In other words, no LGBT queers in the parade. But the biggest spectacle that Chinese leaders wanted everyone to notice was the hundreds of advanced weapons. Xi Jinping, for the first time, showcased the Chinese military's land, sea, and air-based nuclear forces, a complete and deadly triad. The whole thing was also an opportunity to prove to the world that the process of modernization and the world's largest standing army is well underway, and that they are growing. And there are indeed ties, or a special relationship at least, between China and other major nuclear-armed powers, such as Russia and North Korea. Xi Jinping's opening speech, it featured the words, quote, "Humanity is again faced with a choice of peace or war, dialogue or confrontation, and win-win outcomes are zero-sum games," end quote. Well, here's a brief look at the weapons on display. Watch this.
Coming up next for inspection is the first nuclear missiles formation. The heavyweight weapons in the group include Jinlei-1 air-based long-range missile, Julang-3 submarine-based intercontinental missile, Dongfeng 61 land-based intercontinental missile, and the new land-based intercontinental missile of Dongfeng 31. It's the first time that China showcases its nuclear force in land, sea, and air together. They are mighty strategic deterrents to safeguard national sovereignty and dignity.
Air defense laser systems were also showcased during the parade, including a large laser that, according to state-run television, is intended for deployment on naval warships. All of this drew the attention of President Trump. The president wrote in a post to Truth Social, quote, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America," end quote. President Trump also underscored America's World War II defeat of Japan, which ultimately secured lasting peace for China. Zero Hedge noted that, quote, "No, Xi did not give a shout out to the United States for this, but instead Xi stood proudly with his U.S.-sanctioned allies," end quote. A group of Jeffrey Epstein survivors announced a plan to release a list containing the names of all known associates of the billionaire pedophile. That was at a rally last Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Lisa Phillips, who met Epstein in the 2000s, said at the press conference on the steps of the Capitol that she and other survivors were talking amongst themselves and compiling a master list of names of powerful men associated with Epstein. Phillips said, quote, "Several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now together, as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors for survivors," end quote. The news comes on the heels of the FBI and Department of Justice announcing that there is no list of Epstein's purported clients. That's after months of promising to release the list to the public. The group was invited to the Capitol by Representative Thomas Massey and Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat and Republican. Khanna said only a small fraction of information of the Epstein files had been released by government agencies, just 1%. He said, quote, "There is something that is rotten in Washington. We are demanding today in the discharge petition that all of these files be released," end quote. This came after the House Oversight Committee on Tuesday released over 33,000 pages of documents that were furnished by the Department of Justice. This came from various investigations and legal proceedings involving or related to Jeffrey Epstein. The majority of the documents, they were public court filings. Massey said on Wednesday that his bill requiring the release of all Epstein documents had been signed by every Democrat and a handful of Republicans, but still required 2 more Republican signatures. Massey said, quote, "The message is that there's 200 Republicans who could do something to protect, to get justice for the victims and survivors. And I only need 2 of 200. And none of them are stepping up to the plate." End quote. It is Massey's hope that the gathering of survivors at the Capitol will help them get the 2 signatures that he needs for his bill. Here he is speaking at the rally on Wednesday at the Capitol. Watch this.
I hope my colleagues are watching this press conference. I want them to think, what if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter? When these survivors speak, the Washington establishment is asking the American public to believe something that is not believable. They're asking you to believe that 2 individuals created hundreds of victims and they acted alone, and that the DOJ has no idea of who else might have been involved, that nobody else did anything that rose to a criminal enterprise. The American people know that's not true. Now, the Speaker of the House just offered a fig leaf to my colleagues. They're going to vote on a non-binding resolution today that does absolutely nothing. I appreciate the efforts of my colleague James Comer, who's leading the Oversight Committee. They may find some information, but they're allowing the DOJ to curate all of the information that the DOJ is giving them. If you've looked at the pages they've released so far, they're heavily redacted. Some pages are entirely redacted. And 97% of this is already in the public domain. So I'm calling on my colleagues, be one of the next 2 who sponsors this discharge petition. I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax. This is real. There are real survivors. There are real victims to this criminal enterprise. And the perpetrators are being protected because they're rich and powerful and political donors to the establishment here in Washington, D.C. So today we're standing with these survivors and we're giving them a voice. And I want to close by thanking them. They are brave. I hope they encourage other survivors to come forward and to tell their stories, not just of Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell, but anywhere in the country. This is a message that we are sending. This is a litmus test. Can we drain the swamp? Are there people who are outside of the reach of the law? I don't think there should be. So hopefully today we'll get 2 more signatures on the discharge petition. That's all we need.
Massey is one of just 4 members of his party who have signed the bill at this time, along with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Nancy Mace, and Representative Lauren Boebert. In an interview, Massey said 3 billionaires have funded a super PAC whose sole purpose is to defeat him in the next election. These same 3 billionaires are major donors to the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who is repressing the release of the Epstein list. He names them in this video. It says one of the 3 is actually on the Epstein list. Watch this.
I do believe that there are some very rich and powerful people who could be implicated in these files. And they are donors to the Republican Party. In fact, I have 3 billionaires right now who formed a super PAC to run ads against me in Kentucky. They've spent over $2 million already trying to smear my name. And one of those billionaires is in Epstein's black book. So is that a coincidence? Or are there just not that many billionaires who are rich and powerful and upset that I'm trying to release these files? So it is rich and powerful people. I also do believe that because he was connected to so many rich and powerful people, Epstein, and because of other associations he had and things that were said in legal documents by Acosta, for instance, many years ago, I believe that there's a connection not just to Israeli intelligence from Epstein, but also to U.S. intelligence. And the American public, if they found out that our government engages in illegal activity to try to get material or information from either our own citizens or citizens of other countries, I think that would be very upsetting to the American people. One of the billionaires who's running millions of dollars of ads against me back in Kentucky right now is a max donor to the Speaker of the House and also a big contributor to the NRCC, which is the National Republican Congressional Committee, which helps the leadership here in Washington, D.C. get members elected who are Republicans so that we can keep the majority. And his name is John Paulson, by the way. There's only 3 of these billionaires. Miriam Adelson.
Go for it.
Miriam Adelson, who's the heiress, or I'm sorry, widow of Sheldon Adelson, the casino mogul who made their money on gambling and probably broke a lot of lives, fortunes in the process. And then the other 2 are hedge fund managers. One is Paul Singer, who has donated to trans activist projects. He says he's a Republican, but he's given to Democrats. And then you have John Paulson, who did a fundraiser for Chuck Schumer. He claims to be a Republican. He's the one who's in the black book that is public, Epstein's black book.
Wow.
And these are all major, major donors to the Speaker of the House and the Republican cause here, which makes it hard for me to get co-sponsors. By the way, the White House right now is whipping. They're calling up members and asking them and texting them to not co-sponsor this legislation. And in fact, just today, Speaker Johnson introduced competing legislation to mine, and he lifted, completely copied, plagiarized. It's actually very flattering that the Speaker of the House would take 3 pages of my legislation and put them into his legislation. But what he's done is create a placebo, because his language is slightly different than my language. Number one, his is a resolution, not a bill. So it can't be legally binding on the administration. Instead of demanding or compelling the documents from the DOJ and Treasury and the banks, it says it encourages. He uses the word encourage.
Children in Florida will no longer be required to receive vaccines against diseases including measles, mumps, chickenpox, polio, and hepatitis. So said Joseph Ladapo, who is the state's Surgeon General. He said this on Wednesday in a speech during which he likened vaccine mandates to a form of slavery. Ladapo was appointed to his position by Governor Ron DeSantis, and he is a longtime truth teller regarding the toxicity of those vaccines and the dangers of pumping too many of them into young children via government mandates. I'm proud to say he also was here in our town, in our studios, as we produced a, TV special, 1 hours with Dr. Simone Gold and Michelle Malkin and others. So we know him personally. President Trump said on Friday that he doesn't believe Ladapo is on the right track by banning these childhood vaccine mandates. Amid Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s push to end unnecessary vaccination, President Trump expressed support for mandatory vaccines for school-aged children. How do you feel about that? Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he testified on Thursday before the Senate Finance Committee, and that's when Democrats, they sought to grill him about his personal and vaccine guidance shakeup at the CDC. And according to The Hill, quote, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention stopped recommending the COVID-19 vaccine for those under 18. Kennedy, meanwhile, has fired all 17 sitting members of CDC's vaccine advisory panel and also moved to oust the CDC head and other top HHS experts, end quote. During the Senate hearing, RFK Jr. revealed that in the early 2000s, a senior CDC scientist was ordered to destroy data from an internal study that showed a staggering link between, what do you think? Yeah, MMR vaccines, measles, mumps, and rubella, and autism, and the risk particularly in young black boys. We've reported on this now for a few years. The study, it clearly showed the young black boys who got vaccinated before 24 months of age or 36 months of age, quote, had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited, end quote. That's what RFK said. Well, as you know, this all comes after Florida and their Surgeon General announced earlier this week, as I just reported, that the Florida Department of Health, they're planning to remove every last vaccine mandate from Florida law. All of it. Every last one of them. That's what Latipo said. And he said so to loud cheers and a standing ovation. President Trump has seemingly shown support for ending vaccine mandates and sharing concerns about, well, vaccines contributing to autism in the past. However, his latest comments, they appear to be a break from RFK Jr. and Florida's position. President Trump previously, he signed an executive order halting federal funding to schools with a COVID vaccine mandate. That's what the Gateway Pundit has reported. In fact, when a reporter asked about vaccine mandates being rolled back for school children, Trump clearly said that some vaccines, quote, are so amazing, end quote, including the polio vaccine, and, quote, a lot of people think that COVID is amazing, end quote. Then he added, quote, I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated, end quote. Watch this.
Can I ask you another Florida question? The vaccine mandates that were rolled back for school children, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful. Look, you have some vaccines that are so amazing. The polio vaccine, I happen to think, is amazing. A lot of people think that COVID is amazing. You know, there are many people that believe strongly in that. But you have some vaccines that are so incredible. And I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. It's a very tough position. So I'd give you an answer. I'll give you a feeling. But just initially, I heard about it yesterday, and it's a tough stance. Look, you have vaccines that work. They just pure and simple work. They're not controversial at all. And I think those vaccines should be used. Otherwise, some people are going to catch it, and they endanger other people. And when you don't have controversy at all, I think people should take it. Okay.
One more.
We've been reporting a lot recently about AI robots and drones. Put the three together, and you have all new ways of, well, delivering products, whether it be on a retail or wholesale level. What will that mean, of course, for the millions of truckers and delivery drivers that are employed in America? It is not just the drivers who are going to be replaced. Here's an analyst with the scoop on how technology is going to change the biggest player in that space, Amazon, over the next few years. Watch this.
So the superintelligence is where things could get really nutty. And we're already starting, and that's where like the doomsday scenarios, Terminator ones kind of come out of that group. So what happens if, all drivers go away? Well, every self-driving car is 4 full-time jobs, and every humanoid robot in a factory is 5 jobs, maybe 6, because those jobs you can work for maybe 7 hours as a just physical limitation. As humans, we're driving, you can work a 12-hour shift. And those are going to be here, folks. And before 2030, you're going to see Amazon, which has massively invested in this, replace all factory workers and all drivers. The idea that when you order something from Amazon, a human would touch it at any point in that supply chain is insane. It will be 100%, robotic, which means all of those workers are going away. Every Amazon worker, all those jobs, UPS gone, FedEx gone. All of those are going to be gone, and those companies will be more profitable. And when you order something, it's going to come faster and cheaper and better. And your Uber will be half as much, but somebody needs to retrain these people. And that's actually a very valid fear that technologists will tell somebody like you, don't worry about it. There'll just be more jobs created. Yeah. The question is, what happens to those people who get caught in the gap, right? And when we had this happen in the Industrial Revolution, that happened over 40 years, 50 years. And, the agricultural revolution, again, that was multi-decades. This one will happen in a decade. And so it'll be very different. And yeah, you should be concerned.
We'll be right back after this break. The businessman from Texas that spent years trying to bring the perfect red heifers to Israel is coming to speak in Collierville, Tennessee, outside of Memphis, on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. They now have sacrificed one of those red heifers. There it is burning. They've now gained 10 gallons of ashes. Why do they need this? Well, the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 19, says that for the purification ceremony, for their temporary tabernacle or full-time temple, they need the ashes of a perfect red heifer. This is the first time this has happened in over 2,000 years. The story is going global. It's highly controversial. In fact, there's even a connection between the attacks on Israel on October 7th and these 5 red heifers. Come and hear him speak live in person, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Full details, worldviewstore.com, and to get your tickets, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Welcome back from the break. Thanks for being with us tonight. And don't forget, our national conference is coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. And you can be with us live in person in beautiful Collierville, Tennessee. And you can get your tickets now at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. You'll find the hotels, the restaurants, everything there to make it very easy for you. And if you cannot be with us in person, then you can live stream it if you have a membership to our vault. You can do that by going to worldviewtube.com/vault, gaining access to 35 years of our radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, documentaries, and more. worldviewtube.com/vault. So whether you're here with us in person in Collierville, Tennessee, or streaming it online, either way, you can benefit from the 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend with an incredible lineup like Gordon Chang, the man who brought the 5 red heifers to Israel, Dr. Andy Woods, the lead pollster, Mark Mitchell, lead pollster at Rasmussen. All of it, all the details, all the speakers, their bios, the topics. They're at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. And again, you can get your tickets to attend in person there as well. Otherwise, you can, again, live stream it if you have a membership to the vault at worldview2.com/vault. Germany's upcoming state elections have been thrown into disarray after yet another candidate in the populist party, AfD, has suddenly died. The passing of another conservative AfD politician brings the total now to seven sudden and unexpected deaths in just the last few weeks. The string of mysterious and untimely deaths has forced officials to shred and reprint ballots. In fact, it's triggering what the German news outlet Welt called, quote, immense chaos, end quote, in less than 2 weeks before the September 14th vote. AfD priorities, well, they're similar to those of the MAGA movement here in America, putting Germany's interests first and foremost above, well, immigrants, foreign wars, and various other global interests. So we'll keep you posted on this developing story. Well, now it is time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. Slay News reports that the World Council for Health has made a historic move by officially declaring that COVID mRNA vaccines are, quote, biological and technological weapons of mass destruction, end quote. The bombshell declaration was announced by the Global Health Organization's Florida wing. In a stunning announcement, the World Council for Health Florida confirmed it is formally endorsing the, quote, Sansone mRNA Bioweapons Prohibition Act, end quote. As Slay News previously reported, the first of its kind, the bill seeks to criminalize and outlaw the use of mRNA technology under existing state bioweapons laws. The legislation was drafted by medical expert Dr. Joseph Sansone. It was introduced in the Minnesota legislature in April, and it's now being pushed for widespread adoption across all 50 states and even globally. In its official declaration, World Council for Health Florida stated, quote, mRNA nanoparticle injections are biological and technological weapons of mass destruction that have caused a massive amount of disease, disability, and death. And without intervention, this will continue into the foreseeable future, end quote. This group is part of a global alliance with councils in 35 countries. It is the first health freedom organization to explicitly classify the injections as weapons of mass destructions. And that's not all. There was more bombshell vaccine news that you probably did not hear about. Why? Because the mainstream corporate media ignored it. Epidemiologist and expert medical researcher Nick Helsher, he reported that there's a groundbreaking new peer-reviewed study, and it has been published in a medical journal. For the first time, researchers formally analyzed the long-term relationship between COVID-19 vaccines and cancer hospitalizations in a population-wide study of nearly 300,000 residents in Italy. The study followed every resident aged 11 years old or 30 months using official National Health Service data. And the main vaccines administered were Pfizer and Moderna, and they were mRNA shots. Importantly, the statistical models were adjusted for age, sex, comorbidities, prior cancer, and prior SARS-CoV-2 infection. So, this makes it the longest and most comprehensive follow-up to date on cancer outcomes after COVID-19 vaccination. Here's what Nick writes, quote, "The results are deeply concerning. While the study shows the expected biases that make vaccines look like they reduce overall death rates, it also uncovers the first statistically significant evidence of increased cancer risk following COVID-19 vaccination," end quote. No matter how badly the establishment wants to suppress it, the truth is coming out. And I think justice will prevail. In fact, Nick, he said in a September 3rd interview with me that he believes the shots will end up being exposed for what they really are, a dangerous bioweapon, and then taken off the market. Well, let's pray it comes to pass and that justice is served for all the damage that has been done to human health all around the world. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, if you appreciate this broadcast, please remember we are a listener-supported broadcast and network. We push it all out for free, spending thousands of dollars a month in bandwidth so that you can watch it for free. And then there's just the cost of producing the program. It takes a team of about 7 of us, 15 man-hours a day to put it all together. So thank you for your support right now at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. And our phone number, if you'd like to text my wife, Melissa, or leave her a voicemail, she'll get back to you and help you make a contribution over the phone. All the details are there at worldviewfoundation.com. The next time, I'm Brandon House. Thanks for watching. May God save America. Take care.